you so much, Boston Ujima. Thank you. I'm honored that you invited me to do this. I listened to Marcus talk earlier today, so I know I'm following him, and I want to maximize this time as well. Um, so I'm hoping I don't cut out too much, but you know my little bit of my background, but my background does play a part in terms of how I see anarchism. So Ashanti, Michael Alston, Plainfield, New Jersey, born 1954. I feel like I came alive or had a rebirth in the 67 rebellions when in my hometown, like Black folks actually took over the Black community for maybe a week, but significant enough to show me that this fight we've been in for 400 years, there is a way to win our liberation. And then joining the Black Panther Party became another experience. I think I first heard Arundhati Roy use this term portal, and it made me think about how many events in our lives are potential portals that we can enter and go through and come out different. Not so much divorced from where we were, but evolved into something else. And I feel like that was the rebellions for me, and that was the Panthers. But the Panthers as an organization, with a program, caught me at the right time, caught Jihad, Abdul Mumit, and others of us who were teenagers at the right time, that it gave us a way to see what it would mean to be a revolutionary in the United States fighting for the liberation of Black people. What I got from that was most profound for me was there was an undying love for your people. There was an unquenchable thirst for learning and experimentation. And then there was this thing for action. And I really need for you to look at even that last one, action, as, whether it was from someone who did not read, did not like to read, to finally taking the act of opening a book to learn, to someone going into their community now, not to play basketball or to hang out on the corner, but to talk politics. Those are also significant actions that happen in one's revolutionary life, I guess you could say. So I want you to kind of keep that in there, because it plays a big part in terms of, from that point, how I get to this anarchism. Black Panther Party, point number one, we want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of the Black community. There was that point where, you had to understand that before anything else, that we had to determine our own destiny, self-determination, Black power. What did that mean? But the more I learned, because, in the Panther Party, it wasn't just about the guns. In fact, when me and Jihad joined, Jihad, you may hear me use his name off and on, but he's the chairperson now of the National Jericho movement, but we grew up together, high school and all the rest. When we came in, it was about the learning. It wasn't even about the uniform, though we were hoping to get it. And it wasn't about the guns for self-defense. It was about, you're into some new learnings now to help you understand what you're involved with, what you're involved with, all the excitement with it and all the dangers with it, understanding that we were still like, here we are, we want to do this too. We want to do the survival programs. We want to sell the newspapers. We want to be a part of that direct Malcolm X type struggle that actually is going to work to build structures in our communities to fight. And that's when you hear about the survival programs. And that's when you hear about the self-defense classes, or you hear about ways to stand up to landlords and police and anyone else who was a authority figure over your life. How can you now stand up to them and look at how you can take power back over your life? Power to the people. That's what we said. Power to the people. That rang with us. That stayed with us. And it became also international. Power to the people, not to the politicians, not to the preachers, not to none of these profiteers, these hustlers, but to the people. It stuck with me. The magic in it was that for us, our generation, we was just not going to be submissive like we felt prior generations had been, including our parents and others. We had a pride. When they said Black Power, or Africa is beautiful, beautiful, we're Africans, that woke us up. That excited us. Something in us gave us a new lease on life, So we could do these things. And then to find out that after the initial resistance of people in the community who like, well, who are these crazy people, these Panthers, who the government and the newspapers done said as criminals and outlaws and everything else, they can't be that bad if they're feeding the children. They can't be that bad if they're just on the street corner selling the newspapers and talking about the injustices of society and trying to give us ways to fight back. So eventually, when we started to see people come in to the office, or to the lunch program, or to the free clothing programs, or in the high schools, when they really started to listen to us, sometimes after we done took over the cafeteria, there was some magic going on here, because Black people were feeling like, whoa, we can do this. We feel good. And so we had support. Even in that day, what I just said, it's the interaction with people in the community, with what you bring to the table as well, that allows for an authentic relationship between you and the people to happen. All kinds of peoples in the community, whether they was workers, whether they was hustlers in the streets. The gangs were really not, in my neighborhood, they really wasn't even gangs. You just came from one section of the town and another, and you didn't even have a name. But the fact that your persistence gained respect, and people would listen and take a chance in participating. Those things is key. I'm laying that out first because that stayed with me. The thing of learning, the thing of love for the people, and the thing of taking action, at least trying to do these things, to work with people in the community, like you say, those are things that allow for authentic relationships that can also develop into authentic movements to happen. But the Black Panther Party had challenges, right? And the part of it was, some of this was me in prison, being able to reflect back. This leadership structure that was up against the counterintelligence program of the United States government, and the local police departments. And later we find out the FBI was all in there and stuff too. But the fact that our hierarchy structure was something that the government knew how to focus on, the police knew how to focus on to help destroy, like these movements that had just kind of got off the ground, started walking them wobbly first steps. They knew how to focus on this one or that one, because of an ego here or because of a prison record there or whatever it was, and cause the organization to collapse. During the second bid in prison, you know, I had time to read. And this is back to that thing about that reading thing, that learning thing. But now out of the situation, sometimes you got to be out of the situation to kind of see your organization and your organizational efforts to create self-determination. You can actually see it because you're not immediately in the scene. And at the same time, you and your comrades in the prison are talking about it, and you're still reading about the Marxism, Leninisms, and the different struggles, whether it was in Zimbabwe or in Angola or amongst the Latin American revolutionary struggles. It didn't matter. You had a chance to look at it with the help of different perspectives. But what stayed with me was what was our relationships to each other locally in our chapter and nationally within the overall leadership of the Black Panther Party. That wasn't easy because when you talk about a Huey P. Newton and a Bobby Seale and a Geronimo Pratt, you know, Kathleen Cleave and all these people you really put on a pedestal, when the infighting happened, the government knew what to do to cause the downfall of one of the most revolutionary organizations that had ever existed in this empire amongst African people. So it was my search to understand some of the reasons why, and pretty much by accident, to come across some materials that gave me different ways to look at it, to see it. And it went from critical theory, which was a kind of like out of the Marxist thing, but it was much more critical with the insights of psychoanalysis, psychology being used to kind of look at people's thinkings and the cultural impediments that they had kind of taken on. It helped me to see that we were not able to overcome some of our own internalized oppressions. So I'm searching. The critical theory led to the feminist theories, and then the radical psychologies, and then eventually the anarchisms. But what they all had in common was giving me ideas about how we could do this better with creating a unity amongst ourselves that did not require the big brains up here giving orders to us foot soldiers as if we had none, you know, but to challenge us to like be our own leaders, be our own collective bodies that can come together and use a collective way of trying to figure out how to go forward instead of like, oh, well, I'm sharper than this, than you and that. I was more concerned with how can we as individuals within an organization develop the capacity to be our own leaders within a collective body that did not rely on the top-down leadership, the Marcus Garveys, the Martin Luther Kings, who all of these things. Ella Baker would tell you that she was not crazy about the leadership of the Martin Luther Kings. And that meant something because even Ella Baker, working class Black woman, was able to see that we did not need strong leadership. We just needed people who believed in themselves. The anarchism put all of those things in a perspective for me because it said that that authoritarian mentality, that thing that has been drilled into us ever for all of us that born within this empire, that there's got to be a leader and there's got to be led. So when I come out of prison, I'm looking for them groups. I'm looking for examples, and I'm constantly reading. In that Black movement, we have historically been a very male-led movement. And I wanted to question, why is that? Why is it? Because some of the detriments of it is that they get to exclude who doesn't fit the male perspective of who's Black, who's man, who's woman, who's this and who's that. And I'm like, something ain't right with that. But it's the Panther training, because it said power to the people. It didn't say power. I don't care what Huey and them might have thought. If you just take it, power to the people, power through people is what becomes important. So in the times, that I do get to talk, and especially, to you who are here for the Ujima Boston Project, man, even when I sit here and watch how you get started and read up on what you do, I'm like, okay, I'd be thinking that, oh man, I don't think we're ever going to do this. But yet there are groups already learning how to embrace each other in our diversity and not look for someone who's the brainiac, but who are really being inclusive. I'm always concerned with who's being excluded, because that's what the anarchism was teaching me. Who's being excluded? What kind of structures do you need that is more embracing of who we are in our diversity, rather than the narrow-mindedness of many of our nationalist folks? And I consider myself a nationalist in certain ways because my focus is still on the liberation of Black people. But my vision of Blackness is fugitive, outlawish, because it embraces all of us, from straight folks to queer folks to folks who are different abilities and everything. How are we being included in this fight against an empire that is determined to eliminate us? If not just physically, eliminate us by making us the most docile participants in our own oppression. So when I said I was trying to figure out a name for this talk, and it was a little crazy, but I wanted us to imagine what does liberation look like for us now, as opposed to what it may have looked like in 1960s and 70s. I get a sense of that just being on, once a blue moon, I get on Facebook and I'm watching folks from, it's like a new generation of queer folks who are like pushing it. They are pushing the limits, like in imagination of what this world could be. Or I look at women big women, who are like, they're on this Facebook, they're like, I don't care what you think about my body. I'm free and I'm here and I'm in your face. That is a part of this dreaming, visioning process of what the world could be for Black people within this empire, at the same time that we are building with others to at some point do away with the empire. Because folks are in here saying we need to be free, not only from the physical restraints, the political restraints, and the economic restraints, but even here, deep, you're going to get your hands off my body, my spirit. So the anarchism is what tells me, go there. Don't let nobody tell you not to go there. And when that feels like you have also got to kind of oppose some of the older generational leaders, hey, what did we do in the 60s? What did we do in the Black Panther Party? We stood up to older generations that was also so collaborative, so short-sighted that we was like, nope. So today, the Black Anarchism, that's why I really appreciate Marcus Bay's book and William C. Anderson and others, because they are this real intersectionality thing going on here, and there's this vibrancy in the intellectual work that they're putting out, that it needs to also aid us who are still on the ground level to create them kind of unities that helps to push our people forward in inclusive ways. So my anarchism is always very inclusive. I'm looking at the time too, and it's 6:56. I can like end this in about 4 minutes, because I do want to, if there's time for questions and stuff, I would love for that to happen. But with that, I wanted to kind of read something that dealt with it kind of deals with my vision, if I can find it. Because it explained a lot. Like, I never saw myself doing this at some point. I never thought I was going to make it to 20. And here I am in February, I'll be 70, you know. And it's at them times where I feel like, man, I don't think this generation is going to do it. I really just got to look around, because just the other day, me and my wife did a talk with unity circles in Boston too, transformative justice, sharp, just like you. And I'm like, man, sometimes I'm up here being depressed, and I'm not sure why, because I think you are learning and have been learning the same lessons that I be thinking about all the time. You're already there, you know? And it makes me feel that much better and hopeful, rather than me sitting like, oh man, what's going on? Maybe I'm watching too much CNN. But anyhow, I wrote this thing, envision a world within worlds, where there's principled coexistence within this wonderful diversity within the Black community, wonderful diversity within the Black community. Harlem, Spanish Harlems, Watts, hip hop communities, villages off the Carolina coast, college communities, gay, lesbian, transgender communities, Zulu nations, New African religious communities that mainly come together on Saturday or Sunday, squatter communities, outlaw communities, Kemetic communities, Igbo, Ghanaian, Sierra Leonean, Ethiopian Rasta neighborhoods, nomadic poet artist tribes, and then those of us who just be plain ignorant and harmless and crazy when we have to be, and fun loving and like to journey through and between communities sometimes just to create new mixed ones. What if and how? Ella Baker said, we can do it if we trust ourselves and get away from leadership-led revolution. Kwesi Balogun said, we can do it if we're willing to create a chaos that will shut this mother down. Audre Lorde said, we can do it if we learn to love and respect our beautiful diversity and reject the tools of our oppressors. Harriet Tubman said, ain't no better way than to be at war for a righteous cause. And Frantz Fanon said, if we smack a mother across the face, drive that pig out of our territory at the point of a gun, is liberating for the soul. Okay, that last one, all right, I wrote this at a time. I still feel it in my heart, but I ain't saying you got to go there. What if, envision it, and envision how, no one person, concept, or idea is beyond questioning when it comes to the total liberation of our people and destroying through insurrection this Babylonian empire. Liberation from this nightmare, though, cannot end in being shackled to cutthroat politicians and celebrities out to enrich themselves on fame and fortune at grassroots leaders. Today, I am most concerned with how greatly times have changed to the point of rendering most of our ideas of revolution obsolete. Even our notions of nationalism, family, sexuality, community, etc. It's that thinking that is rocking these notions to such an extent that one looks at the movie Matrix and one realizes that it reflects more about reality today than any nationalist, Marxist, or militant religious speech, so forth and so on. And it goes on, but I'm gonna shut my time. I constantly am thinking, imagining what this future world looks like, because I want us to be truly free. But I know that it is constant challenge of who we are at the same time. Because when one is raised in this empire, you are raised in a mess of its culture. And that struggle to get out of that mess that's within us happens at the same time that we are challenging these larger mega systems of empire that hold us back. And it's not getting discouraged from when dealing with one another, we realize that we all got our shortcomings. You know, we're just human. But to have things in place now where we can actually get to know each other, that means the space has to be different. The challenges are different. But there's a lot of healing, it means, that has to go on at the same time that we're fighting for our survival and our liberation. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. Well, my clock is 7:02. The anarchism is in how we live and how we don't want to have shackles from outside of us or within, that gives us the chance to really enjoy this life with others on a planetary scale. And I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ashanti. I'm just like so grateful for your words of hope. And I want to really create space now because I know many people have been sort of sitting with your words and just like, I'm listening. So we want to create space now for a Q&A, people to share some questions that they've held. Feel free to come off mute and share a question, or just add your question to the chat and we'll get to it that way. So yeah, anyone can jump in. It looks like we already got one from Alex. Could you speak to the structure of the BPP? Did its rigid hierarchy and centralized decision-making structure make it easier for the FBI to take it down?
Yes. And you know, to the point, Alex, and you know, I always keep a packet of information I gotta get to you. But the FBI and the local police system, especially in New York, would have these diagrams, you know, of each chapter, like New York. Here's your leadership top, here's your rank and file. This person handles this function, this person handles that. But it gets deeper, especially with FBI, is that they do a psychological analysis as well, right? So Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver, they're not just that they're the heads, but the FBI and the police want to know more about them here, so that it becomes kind of easier to figure out some schemes to break down the group, because this is things they've been doing internationally, and not even just internationally, but locally too. I mean, you know, I mean, you're talking about working class struggles here. The focus is on the Communist Party when they was in more, progressive phases and whatnot. Indigenous groups, Puerto Rican independence groups. It's like they've been doing this. They've been overthrowing governments. So I think after the initial shock of the Panthers' rise, how we were spreading, they just like said, okay, this is old school. And they went to work, counterintelligence program. The hierarchy limits within the group acceptance of the membership as just capable human beings. The hierarchy got in his mind that they're the only ones that can do this. Lenin was the only one that can do this. Marcus Garvey was the only one that could lead this. Stalin, Mao, it didn't matter. And when you don't challenge that kind of authoritarian thing, because that's the thing it's authoritarian thinking, which I got so much from the critical theory. It allows you to see that the way that we're raised, family, parents are in charge, children under them. Classroom, here's your teacher, the whole way that the classroom is structured. Same thing with the church, whatever it is, Congress, government, CEO in a corporation, that same structure. Those who are not a part of that leadership, they got to follow. They learn to follow from childhood on. It becomes just like that. We want to break that. We want to break that down to see us on an individual basis as capable, and figure out how can collective leadership, how can the circle, even if you're talking about with indigenous folks, which is becoming very popular, how can that be what helps us to be inclusive and to see each other? Because one of the things that drew me to anarchism, it was the face-to-face, that emphasis on face-to-face work, see each other's face, and all that that means on so many levels. So I veer from those hierarchies. I veer from those things that have historically not allowed us to see who has been excluded, and it becomes very important, because if you're not going to exclude people, you're going to invite people in. That's the world that you want too. But if you're already used to excluding people, not seeing people in their full potential, then that world that you're going to create, I don't care what label you put on there, you're most likely going to create another top-down system. And every liberation struggle that I studied, whether it's Africa, Asia, Latin America, Europe, revolution never really happened because another form of oppressive class society was created in its place. They may have kept the language of revolution, socialism, communism, whatever, national liberation, but look at what happened to the people. And one indication I'm going to stop is the position of women while they were fighting the struggle. Women was in all kind of leadership positions, but when they actually were able to run them colonizers out, you look at the position of women after they were put back in their place. So we gotta, it's not only, during the course of the struggle, we want to do the prefigurative politics. We want to try to demonstrate the world we want as we're struggling for it. And to win means that we want to maintain that, so that we can really talk about a society that's beyond the sexisms, beyond all the other negativisms and stuff. Otherwise, they will show their heads again. What I'm looking at the one question I am curious about, liberation without state, what that looks like for you, especially if Palestine is fighting for freedom. Without the state, it actually means that we get to collectively work out our own shit, if I may use that French, you know. And the
Let
yes,
him
say it again.
You
You
can
break.
continue. I'm sorry. You can
Okay,
continue. I'm sorry.
okay, got you. So let me say, like during my time in critical resistance, abolitionist organization in Brooklyn, we had a big thing, a banner across the wall. Once you went inside, it said, "Once there were no prisons, that time shall come again." Right? Liberation for us here is first recognizing Turtle Island, working in collaboration with those who are the original people of this land, right? What might that look like if there's no state to frustrate that, or to be a wall between that? If we're talking about Palestine, we got to deal with the historical struggle here. That this is it was like a postmodern or modern postmodern example of Christopher Columbus coming over here, opening the way for other Europeans to take this land and claim it as theirs. God said we can do this. So these European Jews can go to Palestine, which was not necessarily their first choice, with the help of other empires who had political, geopolitical interests, and just run these people out of their land. And those who resisted, they did what, it was vicious murder. What they saying now, murder, rape, pillage, everything, what they claiming about Hamas. But the root of it is that this is Palestine, and you cannot ignore that. This is not a struggle that happened on October 7th, just a month or so ago. This is you coming to a people, and now you are a state. So that state maintains the situation. Anarchism is definitely an anti-state, way of thinking, movement, right? That state maintains that in the interest of a lot of imperial interests. The Palestinians have to fight for liberation against that state. Against that state. I don't care how much they talk about the two-state thing. The original, injustice is you coming there, taking that land. The original injustice is Europeans coming here to what is now the United States, coming here to Turtle Island and taking this land. Nothing can really be addressed until you address that. Nothing. So you don't allow the propaganda, that the Zionist state is using, to make itself a victim. You stay with the history of this. You stay, and if anything, you stay with the immense genocidal suffering that these Palestinian people are going through, and all the peoples in that region, actually. And I think that's what still bonds me so much from Panther days, that we supported the struggle of Palestine to be free, to be free. And we want the same thing here. Black folks, we want to be free, and we're going to be free. And hopefully it will be on our terms, because any other terms got to be in support of the state. So I'm hoping that people, even me, coming to express that right now. I mean, it's very important that we understand, like, people got to be free. This ain't about your opinion with about Hamas or whatever happened. This is about the original sin and justice of these Europeans coming to Palestine and claiming it. So I'll stop there because I don't want to get too far into that.
Yes, thank you. And we're just gonna let Diva ask that question. So you can go, and then
Okay. I
and
do
then
see.
we're going to jump to that question.
Okay, I do see the one about intercommunalism, if that's the next one. I can be very brief with that. I think even though like Huey, I think Huey was a great thinker in many ways. His practice may not have been that well, but I think he was that his theory of intercommunalism was really right on. His being able to see a future of communities without states, and that those communities in struggle who are liberating territory should be trying to figure out how to come together and mutually aid each other. I think that was really great. Um, so for me, the relationship with anarchism to internationalism is just that. It's got to be mutual aid. I would think that if an anarchist is not talking about how to develop their own struggle in ways that's going to be of help to other struggles outside of their own territory, what kind of anarchism are you talking about? Because that anarchism at root is talking about the human story of people on this planet trying to move away from systems of oppression. Eldridge Cleaver would have said, that we got to move away from the MF. I won't say it because I don't know what the rules are and all that other stuff. But that was when societies became class. Here's the MFs who are coming to oppress you and now justify it with ideological structures, judicial structures, special armed forces, and all like that. We have to fight all them things. Okay.
I'm sorry, if we could just let Diva ask her last question.
Yes.
Ashanti can answer it, and then we'll have to wrap up and transition to neighbor institutions. Before we go ahead and ask.
Is it on the screen?
Oh, she's asking.
I'm not on the screen. I'm in the room.
I don't know.
I'm fine with my face being seen. Hello. Okay. Okay. What's set in my head since I was 17 years old, I wrote this poem. The poem began and ended on how to stir the youth to revolution. I know not where to begin. And I thought of it when you were talking about being a teenager and getting hooked by the Panthers. Obviously, they got a really cool uniform going on and they were saying a lot of really cool stuff. But beyond that, what was it that stirred you to revolution as a young person? What actually made that difference between someone who didn't want to pick up a book and someone who did? Because it was more than an outfit. It had to be.
Yeah. And in fact, when me and Jihad joined the Panther Party, it was the leadership had already said that you couldn't wear the uniform anymore because it made you a target for the police, FBI, and them. So even when we came in, we wanted it. But what made us stay in there was the practice of the Black Panther Party. The fact that we was in the streets and we was, we said rapping, but it was like people was really open to hearing a different narrative on our existence in this country that gave us a way to say, yeah, we can fight back because we have been fighting back, that we never didn't resist, And then the other thing was when we started the free lunch program and the kids would come and then the parents would trickle in. That meant something. It was like, wait a minute, we can do this. And I think the can do was also in a sense of a pro-Black thing, because it was like, we really didn't believe we can do this. Another word, right? The N word. That's what we believed, that we were that in a very negative way for generations. And then when you see that start crumbling, you like, oh, there's no turning back. There's no turning back, because that pride now is making you stand up. It's making you stand up. You know, that when that thing happened in Plainfield, when them brothers and sisters came with them M1s, and we seen them riding around and they was giving out goods, I'm like, really? I'm like 13, 14 years old. I want to fight. There's no turning back, even with the dangerousness of it all, right? So I think that's what kept me in. Then you go to prison, and when you're having them conversations with brothers in prison who might have been hustlers or whatever inside, and now in that situation, locked up situation, they have a chance to like refocus because of your interaction, and you see the light go on in their head and in their and behind their eyes. It's like, okay, we can do this. We can make this happen, even under them circumstances. We can do this, you know, but we really gotta believe it, and we gotta be prepared for the kind of wear and tear that's going to come with it, you know. So that's why, you know, Diva is like even seeing y'all when we was in Puerto Rico, right? I'm like, I watch young folks, and when I see that y'all want to do this, the only thing I can do is try to be available. And for me, I haven't been available, I think, for decades. But there's something now like, no, Ashanti, you got to come out of this depression, man. They believe this. There's light in their eyes. You know, we got to make this work. So it's like whatever we're doing in this struggle, whether it's we got some project going on, like the folks doing transformative justice, they're working in the community, they're trying to help people figure out different ways of reducing harm. Important, right? Other folks are like the Ujima Boston, what it's doing, like important. Don't put it on no hierarchy. It's just important stuff that's got to happen if we're going to pull our people together, you know? So that's what we have to do. And we got to do vision, victory. You know, maybe not right around the corner, but victory nonetheless.